My hands trembled as I hit post on the live stream. The world was about to hear the truth that every soulful melody, every heartfelt lyric my sister Carol had built her stardom on was stolen. From me. Tonight, I was taking back what was mine. My phone lit up with a desperate text from Carol. Stop this now, please. I watched the viewer count climb into the thousands as my fingers found their home on the piano keys. The melody of Midnight Rain, the song I'd written the night our grandmother died, poured from my soul, raw and unfiltered. Not the polished pop version Carol had made famous. Behind me, I heard my father's sharp intake of breath. He'd never heard the original version, had he? Not until tonight, when he showed up at my door with an old USB drive he'd found in the attic. 5 years too late. Play it again, David urged through the speaker. You're live on WNYC, Maria. Show the world who really wrote these songs. I locked eyes with the camera as I shifted into Starlight Promises, the composition Carol hadn't yet stolen. But she'd tried. I'd caught her downloading it from my cloud storage just yesterday. Some say revenge is a dish best served cold. Mine was served with a melody so pure it could break your heart. Flashback, the discovery. The notification chime on my phone jolted me awake at 1:27 a.m. A text from one of my piano students' parents. Maria, I just heard a song on the radio that sounds exactly like the piece you played at Amy's recital last month. It's by Carol Warner. Isn't that your sister? My heart skipped a beat as I fumbled to open the music streaming app, careful not to wake my 15-year-old daughter Amy sleeping in the next room. There it was, featured on the new releases playlist. Midnight Rain by Carol Warner. I'm Maria, 45 years old, and until that moment, I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. When my husband walked out on our 10-year marriage for his 20-something secretary. When my 20th demo was rejected with a note suggesting I was too mature for today's market. When my father missed my first professional performance because Carol had a cold. But this was different. This was theft of the most intimate kind. I pressed play, and the room filled with the unmistakable melody I'd composed the night our grandmother died. The night when rain streamed down the windows like tears, while Carol was away at some industry party. Mom had collapsed, and I was the one who held our family together. I'd poured that grief into music, the only way I knew how to process loss. Despite the pop production, the essence was unmistakably mine. Every chord progression, every emotional turn, even the key changes, all exactly as I'd written them. The song I'd played for Carol when she stayed with me during what she called her career reassessment last year. The song I was saving for my long dreamed of debut album. The album I'd been saving up for while juggling music lessons, single motherhood, and my mother's increasing care needs. Mom? Amy's sleepy voice came from the doorway. Why are you crying? I hadn't even realized tears were streaming down my face. Go back to sleep, honey. Just some grown-up stuff. Is it Grandma? She asked, instantly alert. At 15, she was already too aware of my worry about Ellen's increasingly frequent memory lapses. No, not Grandma. Just something with work. I forced a smile. School tomorrow, remember? Big test. After she reluctantly returned to bed, I called Sarah, my best friend of 20 years and entertainment lawyer. Despite the hour, she answered on the third ring. This better be good, Maria. Some of us have court in the morning. Carol stole my songs. The words felt like glass in my throat. She's released Midnight Rain, the one about Grandma, and it's climbing the charts. A beat of silence. Then, I'm coming over. Don't do anything until I get there. At the kitchen table evidence. 45 minutes later, Sarah and I sat at my kitchen table, diving deep into Carol's recent releases. Each song was undeniably mine, though repackaged with slick production and pop arrangements. She must have copied everything from my laptop while she stayed here, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. All those nights I thought she was just being supportive, sitting in my home studio listening to me play. That sneaky don't, I held up my hand. She's still my sister. A sister who stole your life's work. Sarah's bracelets jangled as she gestured angrily. The work you've been doing between teaching piano to bratty kids and caring for your mother? The songs you were saving to fund Amy's college education and your mother's care? I stared at the streaming numbers on my screen. Carol's version of Midnight Rain had already been played over 2 million times. That translated to thousands of dollars in royalties, money that should have been mine. Money that could have paid for a month of mom's care or a semester of Amy's future college tuition. My phone rang. Mom's name flashed across the screen. I answered on speaker, knowing Sarah needed to hear this too. Maria, have you heard Carol's new song? It's playing everywhere. Your father and I are so proud. We had no idea she was pursuing music seriously. Why didn't you tell us she was so talented? I gripped the phone tighter, watching Sarah's face contort with anger. Mom, Oh, and she's performing on Good Morning America next week. We're all going to watch it together at the house. You'll come, right? She's singing that beautiful song about your grandmother. I closed my eyes, remembering how Mom had always been this way. Carol was her firstborn, her special one. Even when we were children, Mom would rush to Carol's aid for the slightest sniffle, while I was expected to be the responsible one. Dad wasn't much better, lost in his academic world, occasionally emerging to attend Carol's school events while consistently missing mine. I'll try, Mom, I managed to say. I'm pretty busy with students. Oh, you and those piano lessons, Mom sighed. I don't know why you insist on teaching when you could get a proper job with benefits. Carol's offered to help you financially, you know. She's doing so well now. Sarah rolled her eyes dramatically, making slashing motions across her throat. I have to go, Mom. I'll call you back. I ended the call and sank onto my couch, where just last year, Carol and I had spent countless nights sharing wine and secrets. Or so I thought. Play it, Sarah said suddenly. What? Play Midnight Rain. Your version. Right now. I need to record it as evidence. The piano original song. I moved to my piano almost on autopilot, my fingers finding the familiar keys. The melody flowed through me, raw and real, each note carrying the weight of that rainy night when we lost Grandma. My voice cracked as I sang the first verse, but I pushed through. The clock strikes 12 and I'm still awake, watching raindrops paint patterns of heartbreak on windows that witnessed your last goodbye, while thunder echoes the way that you died. I stopped abruptly as Sarah thrust her phone in front of me. There was Carol in a sleek music video, singing my pain in a polished studio version. The timing of the runs, the key changes, it was identical, just with more production gloss. She didn't even try to hide it, Sarah said, her voice hard. She changed the arrangement slightly, added more pop elements. But the core, the soul of it, I couldn't finish. The memory of writing that song was still so vivid. It had been 3 years after my divorce, when Amy was 12. We'd just moved into this apartment, downsizing after I could no longer afford our house. That same month, Grandma had passed away suddenly. Mom had fallen apart, and Dad had retreated into his academic shell, leaving me to handle the funeral arrangements while also helping Amy adjust to a new school. Late that night, with Amy finally asleep, I'd sat at this very piano as rain lashed against the windows. The melody had come to me whole, as if Grandma herself was sending it from wherever she'd gone. I'd captured it all in one sitting, tears streaming down my face as I worked through my grief. And now Carol was performing it on national television, acting as if that pain, that experience, had been hers. Maria, Sarah's voice softened. You have to do something. Like what? Tell everyone my successful sister is a fraud? Tear apart our family? You know how Mom and Dad are. They'll never believe me over their precious firstborn. And with Mom's condition getting worse. So you're just going to let her get away with it? I stood up, walking to the window. Outside, the city was waking up, people hurrying to work, unaware of my world crumbling. No, I said firmly. But if I'm going to do this, I need to be smart about it. I've got Amy to think about. And Mom's care isn't getting any cheaper. Sarah nodded, understanding the weight of my responsibilities. Unlike Carol, who had pursued fame unencumbered, I'd built my life around caring for others. What are you thinking? Sarah asked. I'm thinking it's time the music industry learned what real authenticity sounds like and what it looks like when a 45-year-old woman refuses to be erased. The music school, a daily life. The next day, I taught my usual schedule of piano students, from 7-year-old beginners to retired adults finally pursuing their passion. My converted garage studio was modest but warm, filled with framed sheet music and photos of my students at recitals. This was my real life, not the glamorous world Carol inhabited, but one I'd built with care and dedication. Between lessons, I checked social media. Carol's song was trending, with fans praising her emotional depth and raw talent. The irony was almost too painful to bear. My last student of the day was Lisa, a promising 13-year-old whose mother always arrived exactly 10 minutes early to pick her up. "Mrs. Chen," I said as she settled into the waiting area, "would you mind if I asked you something?" She looked up from her phone. "Of course. That song you texted me about, Carol Warner's Midnight Rain, what made you think it sounded like my music?" "The chord progressions," she answered immediately. "That unusual shift in the bridge, and the way the melody weaves through it. It's exactly like what you played at Amy's recital." I recognized it instantly because Lisa's been trying to learn that technique. She tilted her head. "She's your sister, right? Did you help her write it?" Before I could answer, the door opened and Sarah strode in, carrying a large coffee and a determined expression. "We need to talk," she said as soon as Mrs. Chen and Lisa had left. "I've been doing some digging. Carol's been performing these songs for about 3 months, but she only registered the copyrights 2 weeks ago." "What does that mean?" "It means if you can prove you wrote them earlier, you have a case." "Do you have dated recordings? Anything that shows these were your compositions before she claimed them?" I thought for a moment. "I have the original files on my computer with creation dates. Emails where I sent demos to friends for feedback. And—" I paused, remembering something. "I gave Dad a USB drive with some of these songs on his birthday 5 years ago. If he still has it." "That would be perfect," Sarah nodded. "But before we go legal, we need to build public support. The industry needs to see you as the authentic artist, not just Carol's jealous sister making accusations." "How do we do that?" "We get you performing. Your versions, your way. And we make sure the right people see it." The nursing home, a mother's confusion. The following afternoon, I visited Mom at her assisted living facility. I'd been putting it off, afraid my anger would show through. The familiar antiseptic smell hit me as I walked down the corridor to her room, her name, Ellen Warner, displayed neatly by the door. "Maria." "What a lovely surprise," Mom said, looking up from her magazine. Her face brightened, though I noticed her hands trembling slightly more than during my last visit. "I was just reading about your sister. Isn't it wonderful?" I glanced down. She was holding the latest issue of People magazine with Carol on the cover. "Rising star at 48. Carol Warner breaks age barriers in music." "It's something, all right," I managed, sitting beside her bed. "She always had such a beautiful voice, even as a little girl," Mom continued, though Carol had been average at best until her recent discovery of songwriting talent. "Your father and I always knew she'd make it big someday." I bit my tongue, remembering how many times I'd heard variations of this throughout my childhood. Carol was always going to make it big, while my musical aspirations were merely a nice hobby. Even after I'd earned my music degree with honors, even after I'd performed with respected orchestras, even after I'd composed pieces that actually moved people to tears, Mom still saw my music as secondary to whatever Carol was doing. "How are you feeling today, Mom?" I changed the subject. "Oh, just fine. Did you bring Amy? Such a talented girl, just like her aunt." She paused, looking confused for a moment. "Did you see Carol's performance on that morning show? The one with the people. Good Morning America, Mom." "And no, I missed it. She sang that beautiful song about Mom. About when she died." Mom's eyes welled with tears. It was like she knew exactly how I felt that night. Because it was my song. "I wrote it about how you fell apart, and I had to be the strong one. I was the one who made the funeral arrangements while Carol was too devastated to help. But I couldn't say that. Not to Mom, whose memory was already fuzzy around the edges, who found comfort in believing her eldest daughter had finally fulfilled her potential. Mom started humming the melody to Midnight Rain, slightly off key but recognizable. The irony was almost too much to bear. My mother, singing my song, crediting my sister, while I sat right beside her. Maria, she suddenly stopped, looking at me with unusual clarity. Why don't you play music anymore? You were always so good. I still play, Mom. I teach. I compose. Yes, but. She waved vaguely. Real music. Like Carol. And there it was, the familiar pain. After 25 years of dedication to my craft, raising a daughter alone, helping care for her, I was still the disappointment. Still the one who needed to find something stable. I should get going, I said, standing up. Amy has a science project due. As I walked out, I heard Mom call after me. Bring me one of your CDs next time, dear. I'd love to hear what you're working on these days. She'd asked for the same thing during my last 3 visits, and had forgotten each time. The music educator's event meeting. David, you need to see this, Sarah said, entering my studio after my last lesson the following week. She pulled up a YouTube video on her tablet. Carol's interview on a popular music podcast. I don't think I can. Trust me, you need to see this part. The interviewer leaned forward, looking intently at my sister. Your songwriting process is fascinating. Tell us about how Crystal Heart came to be. I felt my stomach clench. Crystal Heart was the song I wrote after my divorce 5 years ago, when I discovered my husband had been seeing his secretary for months. I'd poured that betrayal into music, working through nights after Amy had gone to bed, until I had captured exactly how it felt to see someone's true colors. Carol smiled, that practiced smile of hers, the one she'd perfected for record executives since her 20s. I actually wrote that one in my car. There's something about driving alone at night that just brings out the emotions, you know? I had to laugh. Carol rarely drove herself anywhere these days. She had drivers, assistants, handlers. Interesting, the interviewer said, because there's been some online speculation about similarities between your style and an underground artist from your hometown. The camera caught it, just for a split second, the flash of panic in Carol's eyes before she recovered. Oh, her laugh sounded forced. I hadn't heard about that. Sarah paused the video. See? She's getting sloppy. People are starting to notice something's off. She handed me a flyer. The Music Educators Association is having their annual showcase tomorrow night. David Barnes will be there. The David Barnes? The producer? My heart skipped. Yes. Rachel called me. She says he's been asking questions about Carol's sudden songwriting talents. You need to go. Perform. Show him the real thing. I stared at the flyer. David Barnes was a legend in the industry, known for his commitment to authentic artistry, especially in his later career. Having him in my corner could change everything. The next evening, I found myself at the Music Educator Showcase, nervously adjusting my simple black dress. At 45, I was caught in that awkward middle ground, too old to be the inu, too young for the dignified elder statesman role. The room was filled with music teachers from around the city, along with a handful of industry professionals scouting for undiscovered talent. I spotted him immediately. David Barnes, with his distinctive salt and pepper beard and watchful eyes, standing quietly in a corner, observing rather than networking. Unlike most industry executives, who favored designer suits and aggressive self-promotion, David wore a simple button-down shirt and listened more than he spoke. After 3 other educators had performed, the host called my name. Next up, Maria Warner, piano teacher and composer. As I walked to the piano, I felt a moment of panic. What was I doing here? I was a middle-aged piano teacher, not a rising star. But then I remembered this was my music. My life. My truth. I sat down and began to play Starlight Promises, the song Carol hadn't stolen yet. It was a piece I'd written for Amy when she was going through a difficult time at school, a musical promise that things would get better, that light always returns after darkness. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment before erupting in applause. I stood, nodding my thanks, and as I turned to leave the stage, I caught David Barnes' eye. He wasn't clapping. He was watching me intently, a slight furrow between his brows. Miss Warner, he said, approaching me after the showcase portion had ended. That was extraordinary. I'd like to speak with you for a moment, if you have time. We found a quiet corner, away from the mingling crowd. You're related to Carol Warner, he said. It wasn't a question. She's my sister. Interesting. He studied me for a moment. I've worked with her on her recent album. Something's been bothering me about her material. It's excellent, but inconsistent. Some songs feel deeply authentic, others manufactured. He paused. The authentic ones, they're yours, aren't they? I stared at him, stunned by his directness. How did you know? I've been doing this for 30 years, Miss Warner. I know the difference between someone who's lived a song and someone who's performing it. He smiled slightly. Besides, the way you just played, that can't be fate. She stole my work, I said quietly. Everything that made her famous, it's all mine. David nodded, unsurprised. The industry's tough on aging women performers. Makes people desperate. He paused. I should know. I used to be part of the problem. What do you mean? Early in my career, I focused on commercial appeal over authenticity. Pushed artists to be what the market wanted, not who they really were. He gestured to a photo on his phone, David with a much younger woman, both smiling. My wife was a singer-songwriter. Brilliant, authentic. I didn't support her work the way I should have. Too focused on commercial success. What happened? Cancer took her 5 years ago. Now I'm trying to make it right by helping real artists. Artists like you. He handed me his card. Come to my studio tomorrow. Bring your work, the original versions, not the ones your sister performed. Let's talk about getting your voice heard. The birthday party confrontation. Maria. What are you doing here? Carol's shocked voice cut through the murmur of the elderly residents gathered in the community room of Mom's care facility. It was Mom's 68th birthday celebration, organized by the staff with a small cake and modest decorations. I hadn't expected Carol to actually show up. She typically sent lavish gifts and video messages rather than making the trek to the unglamorous assisted living facility in person. She looked immaculate as always, designer outfit, perfect makeup hiding the fine lines around her eyes, her hair freshly colored to conceal any hint of gray. Next to her, in my practical teaching clothes, I felt every one of my 45 years. It's Mom's birthday, I replied evenly. Why wouldn't I be here? Carol's smile tightened as she glanced around the room. Of course. I just thought you'd be busy with whatever it is you do these days. Teaching piano. Raising my daughter. Caring for our mother. I met her gaze directly. Writing songs that somehow end up on your albums. Her practiced smile faltered. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. I lowered my voice. You accessed my cloud storage 3 days ago. Looking for more material to steal? Color drained from her face. This isn't the place, Maria. You're right. This should be handled in court. I watched her eyes widen with panic. But out of respect for Mom, I'm giving you a chance to make this right. The Carol I remembered from childhood, the sister who had taught me to ride a bike, who had stood up for me when neighborhood kids teased me for preferring piano practice to games, seemed momentarily visible beneath the celebrity veneer. You're being ridiculous, she recovered quickly. We used to collaborate when we were younger. Those songs were always meant for both of us. Collaborate? We never collaborated on anything in our lives. You were too busy being the center of attention. Even as I said it, I remembered the few times we had made music together as teenagers, Carol singing while I played piano, before competition and jealousy had driven us apart. Before she decided music was my thing and turned pursuing popularity instead. You don't understand what it's like, she hissed, grabbing my arm and pulling me toward a quiet corner. Do you know what happens to women my age in this industry? One day, you're the hot new thing. The next, you're yesterday's news. Too old, too irrelevant. For the first time, I saw past my sister's perfect facade to the desperation beneath. The fear in her eyes was real. Carol had always been afraid of being ordinary, of disappearing into the background. It had driven her as a child, pushing her to be the loudest, the prettiest, the most noticed in any room. So you stole from me? Your own sister? I. She looked away. Your songs were just sitting there, going nowhere. I made them successful. I made them matter. They mattered to me. They were for my album, the one I've been saving for while paying Amy's school fees and mom's care bills. I felt my voice crack. While you were chasing fame, I was holding our family together. Girls, there you are. Mom's voice interrupted us. She wobbled over, her walker making a slight squeak on the linoleum. Why are you hiding in the corner? Carol, honey, everyone wants to hear you sing. Mom, I don't think, I began. Oh, please do sing, Carol, one of the elderly residents called out. We love that song about the rain. Mom beamed. Yes, the one about when Grandma died. It makes me remember her so clearly. Carol shot me a panicked look. I saw the calculation in her eyes. She could fake her way through the song, having performed it countless times, but she couldn't play the piano part. She'd never learned music theory, never understood the complex chord progressions I'd built into the piece. Actually, I said, moving to the old upright piano in the corner. Why don't we both sing it? For Mom's birthday. Carol's eyes widened, but with everyone watching, she had no choice but to nod. I began playing the original arrangement of Midnight Rain, not the pop version from her album, but the raw, emotional piece I'd written on that stormy night. As my fingers found the opening chords, I saw Mom's expression change, a flash of recognition crossing her face. Carol began singing, her professional voice clear and strong. But when we reached the bridge, the part where the key changes and the emotional center of the song reveals itself, she faltered, losing the thread of the melody only a true composer would understand. I joined in, my voice harmonizing with hers, guiding her through the section she'd never fully grasped. Our voices blended as they had decades ago, when we were children singing in the backseat of Dad's old station wagon, before competition and jealousy had driven us apart. When we finished, the room was silent. Then Mom began to clap, tears streaming down her face. I remember, she said clearly, with none of the confusion that had marked her speech lately. I remember that night. Maria sat with me for hours while I cried. She made tea and held my hand. And later, I heard her playing this song. Carol stared at Mom, then at me, her carefully constructed narrative crumbling before our eyes. David's studio recognition. David Barnes' studio was nothing like I'd imagined. Instead of the sleek, corporate environment I expected, it was a converted warehouse filled with vintage instruments and warm lighting. David himself, with his salt and pepper beard and well-worn flannel shirt, looked more like a favorite uncle than a powerful industry executive. Thanks for coming in, he said, gesturing me toward a beautiful grand piano in the center of the room. Would you play something for me? Whatever you're working on currently. I sat at the piano, my fingers hovering over the keys for a moment. Then I began to play a new composition I'd started after discovering Carol's theft, a piece about betrayal, rebirth, and the complicated love between sisters. David listened intently, his eyes closed. When I finished, he opened them and nodded. That's what's been missing from Carol's recent work. Soul. Authenticity. He leaned forward. Tell me everything, from the beginning. For the next hour, I poured out the whole story, how Carol had stayed with me during a career slump, how she'd had access to my files, how she'd systematically released my songs as her own. I showed him the original files on my laptop, with creation dates years before Carol's versions. The industry does this to women, David said thoughtfully. Pits them against each other. Values youth over experience, appearance over substance. But it doesn't have to be that way. He looked at me intently. What do you want out of this, Maria? Money? Recognition? I thought carefully before answering. I want my work acknowledged. I want to finish my album, the one I've been working toward for 20 years. And I hesitated. I want my sister back. Not the celebrity, but the Carol I grew up with. David nodded. Then let's make all of that happen. He outlined a plan. We would record definitive versions of all the songs Carol had stolen, plus the new material I was working on. We would build a case, document everything, and wait for the right moment to act. But first, he said, we need to protect what she hasn't taken yet. That cloud storage she accessed, I'm assuming that's where you keep your works in progress? I nodded. Let's set a trap. Upload a new version of Starlight Promises, something that sounds good but is deliberately flawed. Hide some musical errors in it that only the true composer would recognize. And then? And then we wait to see if she takes the bait. Over the next week, I worked with David, recording definitive versions of all my original compositions. He was different from any producer I'd ever worked with, a patient, respectful, genuinely interested in preserving the emotional core of each piece rather than commercializing it. My wife taught me that, he said during a break, showing me a photo of a beautiful woman with kind eyes. Lisa had the most authentic voice I'd ever heard. But the industry wanted to package her, make her more marketable. I pushed her to conform, to chase success instead of artistic integrity. He looked away. She got sick before I could make it right. I'm sorry, I said gently. Our daughter hasn't spoken to me since the funeral. She blames me for pushing her mother to prioritize career over health. David carefully put the photo away. That's why this matters so much to me, helping artists be true to themselves. It's too late for Lisa, but not for others. Not for you. That evening, I uploaded the altered version of Starlight Promises to my cloud storage, a beautiful but deliberately flawed piece with subtle musical errors that only a true composer would recognize. Then I waited. 3 days later, I received a notification. Unknown device login to my cloud account. She took the bait. I told David over the phone. His voice was grim. Now we wait to see what she does with it. Family meeting the hospital. 2 weeks later, I received a panicked call from Dad. Maria, it's your mother. She had an episode at the facility. We're at Memorial Hospital. I rushed to the hospital, finding Dad in the waiting room, looking suddenly old and frail in the harsh fluorescent lighting. His academic poise had abandoned him. His hands trembled as he clutched a paper cup of coffee. What happened? She got confused and agitated during lunch. Thought the staff were intruders. She fell trying to get away from them. He removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes wearily. They're running tests now. I sat beside him, the weight of our complicated family history momentarily set aside in the face of this immediate crisis. Have you called Carol? She's on her way. Flying in from Los Angeles. He hesitated. Maria, there's something I need to tell you. I found an old USB drive while going through some boxes in the attic. Your USB drive. My heart quickened. The one I gave you 5 years ago? With my music on it? He nodded, looking ashamed. I never listened to it. Not until last week. I was organizing things, trying to. His voice broke. Trying to prepare for whatever comes next with your mother. And I heard Midnight Rain. Your version. He looked up, his eyes filled with remorse. And then I heard Carol perform it on television. It's the same song. Your song. The admission hung between us, not just about the song, but about years of not really listening, not really seeing me. Why didn't you tell me Carol was taking your music? He asked. Would you have believed me? I asked quietly. He looked away, the answer clear in his silence. I'm sorry, Maria. I've missed so much, haven't I? Always buried in my work. Always assuming Carol needed more attention. It's okay, Dad. No, it's not. His eyes met mine, truly seeing me perhaps for the first time in decades. You've been the backbone of this family for years. While I was publishing papers and Carol was chasing fame, you were raising Amy, teaching, caring for your mother, and still creating beautiful music. A doctor appeared in the doorway. Professor Warner? Your wife's tests are complete. We'd like to speak with you. As Dad followed the doctor, I sat alone in the sterile waiting room, the reality of our situation sinking in. Mom's condition was worsening. Dad was finally acknowledging truths he'd avoided for years. And somewhere in the air, Carol was flying toward us, unaware of how everything was about to change. An hour later, Dad returned, his face grave. The doctor confirmed what we suspected. Your mother's dementia is progressing faster than expected. They're recommending a move to the memory care unit. I nodded, having anticipated this for months while everyone else was in denial. What can I do? Just be here. Carol should arrive soon, and we'll need to discuss the financial arrangements. The memory care unit is significantly more expensive. As if summoned by her name, Carol appeared at the entrance to the waiting room. Gone was the glamorous pop star. She looked exhausted, her hair hastily pulled back, her face bare of makeup. Dad? Maria? Her voice trembled. How is she? Before either of us could answer, Dad did something unexpected. He engulfed Carol in a tight hug, then reached out and pulled me into the embrace as well. For a moment, we were just a family again, a frightened, flawed family facing the possible loss of its center. We need to talk, Dad said as he released us. All of us. About Mom, about the future, and about the music. Carol's eyes darted to mine, understanding immediately. Dad, I can explain. There's no need, he said firmly. I heard the original recordings. I know the truth, Carol. What matters now is how we move forward as a family. The confession hospital chapel. The hospital chapel was empty save for the three of us. Dad had suggested we speak there, away from the bustle of the emergency room. A small piano sat in the corner, dusty but serviceable. I can handle the additional costs for your mother's care, Dad began. But I think it's time we address the elephant in the room. He looked directly at Carol. You've been performing Maria's songs, claiming them as your own. Carol's carefully constructed facade crumbled. She sank onto a bench, covering her face with her hands. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she whispered. Then why did you do it? I asked, the question I'd been holding back for months. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. Do you know what it's like to be told you're past your prime at 40? To have producers suggest you try acting or hosting instead of singing because you're aging out of the market? To watch 20-year-olds take your spot because the industry values youth over experience? I remained silent, letting her continue. I was desperate. My last album tanked. My label was about to drop me. And then I heard you playing these amazing songs with real emotion, real substance. Songs the industry didn't care about because they came from an unknown middle-aged piano teacher instead of a marketable young star. So you stole them, Dad said flatly. I told myself I was giving them a chance to be heard. That I was doing Maria a favor. She laughed bitterly. I convinced myself she'd never do anything with them anyway, too busy with her students and Amy and Mom. The chapel's silence seemed to amplify her words. Years of competition, of unequal treatment, of divergent paths had led us to this moment. I wanted to matter again, Carol admitted softly. I wanted to be special, like I was when we were kids. When Mom and Dad thought I was going to be something amazing. I recognized the vulnerability in her voice, the same insecurity that had driven her since childhood, always needing to be the center of attention, always fearing she wasn't enough without external validation. I accessed your cloud storage again last week, she confessed. Downloaded Starlight Promises. But something's wrong with it. The key change in the bridge, it doesn't work. And there's a chord progression that feels off. I smiled slightly. I know. I put those mistakes in deliberately. It was a trap. Carol stared at me, then let out a small, surprised laugh. I never gave you enough credit for being clever, did I? No, you didn't. Dad cleared his throat. Where do we go from here? Carol, you need to make this right. I know. She straightened her shoulders. I'll release a statement acknowledging Maria as the composer. Pay back the royalties. Whatever it takes. It's not just about the money or the credit, I said, moving to the dusty piano. It's about the truth. About who we really are beneath all the roles we've been playing. I began to play a new melody, one I'd been working on since Mom's condition became apparent, a piece about memory, about love that persists even as recognition fades. This is called Remember for Me, I explained as I played. It's about Mom, about how we become the keepers of memories for those who can no longer hold them themselves. The simple, haunting melody filled the small chapel. When I finished, I looked up to find both Dad and Carol watching me, their eyes glistening with tears. That's beautiful, Carol whispered. That's what's been missing from my music. Real life, real emotion. You could have that too, I said gently. You don't need to steal it. You just need to live it, feel it, express it honestly. Carol looked away. I'm not sure I know how anymore. Then maybe it's time you learned. Starting with being honest with yourself, with your fans, with our family. Dad stood up, determination in his eyes. Here's what we're going to do. Carol, you'll acknowledge Maria as the composer of the songs you've performed. Maria, you'll finish your album, I'll help with the financing if needed. And together, we'll figure out how to care for your mother. He looked at each of us in turn. No more secrets. No more pretending. Just truth. As we walked toward the exit, Carol hesitated. Maria, that new song. Remember for me. Would you? Would you consider letting me sing it with you? Not taking it, not claiming it. Just as sisters? It was the first genuine request she'd made in years, without calculation or manipulation. A small step, perhaps, but a significant one. Maybe, I replied. But first, you need to find your own voice, Carol. Your real one. The memory care unit, 6 months later, 6 months later, the small performing space at Mom's memory care facility was packed beyond capacity. Residents in wheelchairs lined the walls, staff members stood in doorways, and my daughter Amy sat in the front row beside Dad, who had taken early retirement to be more present for Mom. David sat at the soundboard, adjusting levels and nodding approvingly. My debut album, Sister's Keeper, was releasing tomorrow at 45. I was finally seeing my dream materialize, though in a very different way than I'd once imagined. Behind the makeshift curtain, Carol paced nervously. There are music critics out there, she whispered. Why did you invite them to this, of all places? Because this matters more than Madison Square Garden, I replied simply. This is for Mom. Carol had publicly acknowledged me as the songwriter of her earlier hits, a move that had cost her some pride but earned her unexpected respect for her honesty. The scandal had eventually faded, replaced by interest in our unusual reconciliation. Her career had taken a hit, but hadn't collapsed. Instead, she was reinventing herself, working with David to find her authentic voice rather than borrowing mine. You know, I was terrified when I made that announcement, Carol admitted, smoothing her simple dress, so different from her usual stage attire. I thought it would be the end of everything. But it was actually freeing. Like putting down a heavy weight I'd been carrying. The truth usually feels that way, I said, adjusting the sheet music on the piano. Are you ready? She took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be to perform without auto-tune and a backing track. I laughed, surprised by her self-deprecating humor, a new development in our relationship. Over the past months, as we navigated Mom's care together, I'd caught glimpses of the sister I'd nearly forgotten, the one who'd existed before fame and competition had warped our connection. I stepped out to the piano and the room quieted. Thank you all for coming. Music has always been how I process life's most important moments. Today, I want to share some songs from my new album, which tells the story of our family, the good, the difficult, and everything in between. I played 3 songs from the album, each one received with warm applause. Then I spoke again. For our final piece, I'd like to invite my sister Carol to join me. We're working on some new material together, actual collaboration this time. Carol walked out, visibly nervous without her usual stage production to hide behind. We'd spent weeks working on Remember for Me, turning it into a duet that spoke to our shared experience of watching our mother's memories fade. As we sang, I watched Mom in the audience. She swayed slightly to the music, her eyes sometimes focusing, sometimes drifting. She might not remember who we were tomorrow, but in this moment, the music was reaching her. Our voices blended on the final chorus. When your memories start to fade, I'll be your story. I'll be your voice, I'll remember for you the joy, the pain, all the in-between. I'll carry your heart when you forget me. There wasn't a dry eye in the room when we finished. Mom clapped enthusiastically, a bright smile on her face. My girls, she said clearly. My beautiful, talented girls. Later, as the room emptied, Melissa Hamilton, the music journalist David had invited, approached us. This is going to make quite a story. Midlife music breakthrough. Maria Warner proves talent has no expiration date. I smiled. As long as you mentioned that the best collaborations sometimes come after the hardest conflicts. Carol squeezed my hand. And that sometimes it takes a lifetime to find your true voice. Amy bounded up, her teenage enthusiasm breaking through her usual cool facade. Mom, that was amazing. Grandma remembered all the words to the chorus. As my daughter hugged me, I caught Dad's eye over her shoulder. He nodded, a gesture filled with pride and a silent acknowledgement of all the years he'd missed recognizing what was right in front of him. David approached with a small smile. Ready for tomorrow's release? The early reviews are outstanding. As ready as a 45-year-old debut artist can be, I laughed. Age is just a number. Rachel chimed in, joining our circle. It's what you've lived that makes the music matter. I looked around at my unlikely support system, my daughter, my father, my sister, friends new and old. The path had been nothing like I'd imagined, filled with betrayal and pain, but also unexpected reconciliation and new beginnings. Tomorrow my music would finally be heard under my own name. But today, watching my mother sway to melodies that momentarily brought her memories back, I realized I'd already received the recognition that mattered most. Carol leaned close to whisper. She remembers the music, even when she forgets us. There's something magical in that, isn't there? I nodded, watching Mom hum our melody as the nurse helped her back to her room. Music reaches places in the mind that words can't. Like family, Carol added thoughtfully. It can hurt you deeper than anything else, but it can also heal you in ways nothing else can. Sarah appeared with cups of chai tea, our childhood favorite. To new beginnings, she said, handing us each a cup. To truth, I replied, touching my cup to theirs. And to making our own music, Carol completed our toast. Around us, people celebrated the upcoming album release, but in that moment it was just two sisters, two cups of chai, and the possibility of harmony yet to come.